Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of Breakdowns for Breakfast. My name is Danger, and joining me is a fella that I cannot properly break down an album without. Monster. Say hi, Monster.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Oh, I am fine. On this episode of Breakdowns for Breakfast, we are going to take it back to a self-titled album by a band called The Used, and their album was released June 25th, 2002. Sorry, 2002. Yeah, this one takes it back to the beginning of the emo screamo land. So
yeah, and just to be clear, this is their self-titled debut. Some bands, their first album's not self-titled, but this is their first album.
I mean, Metallica put out, what was it, like 5 albums before doing a self-titled album? So,
My favorite album is 311's Blue album, which was actually their third record.
Yeah. I think Weezer has put out the most self-titled albums. They just keep calling it the Blue album, the Green album, the Yellow album, let's just Black album, whatever the color of the album cover is. So anyway, all right, let's talk about The Used. Let's talk about this album. That's what we're here to do. So go ahead and give me what you got. I see your face is filled with 2002 joy.
So this is definitely one that I bought when it came out in 2002. I've told stories on this podcast before. This was, I was in high school. I was definitely mostly wearing Jinko jeans, listening to Limp Bizkit, but I was also playing guitar in bands that were kind of shooting for this sound. So I listened to a lot of this, Thrice, My Chemical Romance, other mall emo bands, and liked some of it, but it was never really my thing. And I remember at first kind of thinking The Used was a little bit better because they were a little bit heavier, because they were on Ozfest. And, I heard Box Full of Sharp Objects and was like, okay, yeah, this is emo screamo kind of stuff, but it's pretty heavy. And then I listened to the album and was like, oh, it's just kind of the same stuff. And we've talked about this on other episodes, certain bands having little quirks being a feature, not a bug. Well, for me, I think some of the things that people consider features of The Used are bugs for me. Most specifically, Mr. Burt McCracken. I have a hard time with his vocal choices.
Really? Because I actually think that Burt McCracken is a great asset to this. Now, I want to go ahead.
That's what everybody thinks.
I want to go ahead and give you my introduction to this band. So I bought tickets to go see The Used play, and Coheed and Cambria, this little band that I'd never heard of, was opening for them. And I really didn't know The Used. I saw one of the videos off of this. I think it was Buried Myself Alive. I think I saw that video a couple times. I was like, oh, I like them. And so it was, it was one of those things where I bought a ticket to a show where it was like, I think I like this band, but I want to see more. I did that a lot back in high school, where I wasn't super familiar with the band, but I just kind of went to go see them. But I love this band. I don't love everything they've done, but this album, we talked about when we were planning this and went out, we talked about not sure if this one's going to hold up. And I can tell you for sure, this one held up in every way to me. I love this album. I do. I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. This is up there for me.
Well, then this conversation will be fun, because I was sort of in the same boat. I listened to it a lot when I was younger. I have not revisited it in a very long time, and I felt like it didn't hold up at all. And in fact, I feel like the only reason you feel like it has held up is because you're looking at it with rose-tinted glasses. You're remembering that concert with Coheed. You're remembering 2002 Danger in high school. And there's all these emotions and feelings that are involved with that time period. And so I've got albums that feel that way for me too. This just wasn't one of them.
Okay, I can tell you that my final score, I actually had to drop some because I wanted to take out any nostalgia that was to it. And
that's
so
fair.
I think my final score is reflective of that. I did the what we've joked about, doing the nostalgia deduction. And,
right.
I gave it that because I understand that this album probably does have that to it. And that's fine. I could tell you that where I said before, Burt McCracken's voice, I think Burt McCracken's scream is perfect here. I love his scream here because Burt McCracken and the rest of the band created this thing that I was calling pop screamo, and with a capital emo. And I say that because when I saw The Used, I don't know, a couple years ago, I actually saw them open for Coheed and Cambria, and Burt, who at one time hated the term, but on stage he was like, The Used is now and has always been and will forever be an emo band. Now, I think that they are a certain section of emo that leans more into the screamo, but I do think they have plenty of pop parts to their stuff, which is part of why this album is as good as it is.
McCracken is a good name because that is what his voice does constantly.
It does.
And that to me is that's the feature or a bug debate, is that like for some people they hear that and it's, oh, he's so emotional that he can't control his voice, where I'm going, you're the lead singer of a professional rock band. Control your voice. So, and I'm not saying I listen to a ton of stuff with screaming, and I understand there's kind of different styles of screaming. But for me, this doesn't sound overly emotional. This sounds like a dude who doesn't quite know how to control his voice yet. And from everything I've seen at this time, he didn't. He was brand new to being a singer. So I get like that's part of it, but that doesn't mean I like it.
Yeah. So I kind of think that, you know, his voice and the cracking is just what his voice is on this. I actually think that his lyrics actually hold a lot of the emotion over his voice barely hanging on. But
some of these lyrics are just some of the most cringe, groan-inducing emo lyrics. Like,
you're the most cringe-inducing emo.
No. You can't. See, this is what I'm saying. In 2002, when you hear a whiny guy talk like this, you can relate to it because we were whiny little guys sometimes. But as an adult,
I still am a whiny little guy.
But just as an adult, like these kind of lyrics don't really work for me, and that kind of like quote unquote raw emotion, like with the screaming and stuff, doesn't work for me either. I don't know. Like some of the emo and screamo, mall emo from this time, I can get behind because there's well-crafted songs that really stand the test of time. And there's a couple of those on here. Like, let me, make no mistake. I'm not saying this album is terrible, because it's not. There's some stuff I like for sure, but I just don't think it has. Put it this way. There's a reason you still hear My Chemical Romance songs on like mainstream radio, but you don't hear too much of this. You know what I mean?
I can't tell you the last time I listened to mainstream radio, and before that, I can't tell you the last time I heard a My Chemical Romance song there. And I think that part of the My Chemical Romance whole deal is completely wrapped up in they're a good band. I've never been the biggest My Chemical Romance fan.
Yeah, me neither.
They're a good band, but I also think that they kind of were the darlings of the scene. And, them kind of disappearing, breaking up, it's almost, it goes to that thing about like a musician's success is greater after they die,
Right. Yeah, I get that for sure.
My Chemical Romance. And I think that's why people got excited when they got back together and did their whatever,
And I'll be the first to say that, like I've said before, this time, early 2000s, I'm in high school. I'm fully entranced with nu metal. But I knew a lot of guys that were fully into this. So I was hearing all of this as it was coming out as well, and digesting all of it as well. But this flavor just never really stuck with me. Because, see, I did like, for example, we've talked about this on other episodes. Like, I liked bands like Thrice because they had a little bit more like technical guitar stuff. And then I liked Finch because they had a little bit more bounce and groove, even on What It Is to Burn. So for me, this kind of like raw, sporadic, just voice cracking, screaming over the pretty parts style of screamo emo, it never worked for me very well.
I knew other people that thought that, but they were usually the ones that were wanting nu metal to last longer, because this came out 2002, June 25th, 2002. So right in the middle of 2002, which was almost at the very end of nu metal. Call this the album that killed nu metal. But, and I actually think that this was a hugely important album to this whole scene.
I won't disagree with that because sort of like how we've talked about grunge kind of killed the hair metal thing, this mall screamo emo stuff kind of killed the nu metal thing. Because if you think about it, especially the top dogs, your Limp Bizkits and, that kind of machismo rap metal stuff.
Right.
This is the music for the people that were getting bullied by the kids in Limp Bizkit and Korn t-shirts. Now, I was one of those like in-betweeners because I was like in high school, I weighed 90 pounds and had a buzz cut and everybody thought I had leukemia and like I got picked on plenty.
Are you feeling okay now?
Now I'm getting too fat. Now I weigh myself and I'm not pleasantly surprised. So I was kind of like in between the two. And again, because I was playing in bands that sounded similar to this. I was playing in bands that sounded more similar to this than what I mostly enjoyed listening to. But I agree with you. I think that this is when nu metal started to kind of, some of the bands stuck around and kind of shifted to more like radio mainstream rock. Like Disturbed was kind of getting away from weird nu metal and getting more into like butt rock territory.
Yeah.
Same with like 3 Days Grace and Seether and stuff like that. Post grunge sort of started to get bigger here too. But I think this like, you got the guys that are like, throwing up the metal sign and being all hardcore. And then you got these guys that are like screaming their hearts out, being like sort of the middle finger to that nu metal sound.
Now, we've talked about some of the newer albums of what this scene kind of turned into, which I feel like this scene kind of turned into the metalcore scene. I feel like it doesn't take a hard jump to get there. And one of the things that we've talked about with that nu metal scene, or not nu metal, sorry, with that metalcore scene is that nu metal has an influence on it because the people that are making it now were listening to that at that time, or their older brothers were, or whatever. And so this is, like you're talking about, this is a band that is music that was identified by people that were being picked on by the guys in the nu metal, into the nu metal stuff. So I think that's an interesting, interesting perspective on this, or interesting look at it is this is the anti-nu metal, in my opinion.
Right, which is why I think it doesn't hold up for me as well. Because to your point, I do think like you got at the time, you want to go so hard against what's popular. And so this is the anti-nu metal. As they get older, they're also going, man, some of that nu metal stuff was actually pretty cool. We should mix that in with what we're doing now too.
Which is what they're doing.
Exactly, which is exactly what you said. So for me, I just feel like the music that resonated with me more has stuck with me more in the future. And that was more of the nu metal, the heavier stuff, where this, and I've said this on plenty of shows before, I never, ever got the soft, pretty music with the screaming vocal on top. Maybe for a brief second here or there, but that happens all over this record. And there were bands that was their whole thing, like Under Oath back in the day. Like that was their thing. I liked Emery a little bit more than some of these other bands, but Emery used to do that all the time too. And so that's kind of why I was struggling with this one.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so there was something about when I listen to this now that I couldn't get out of my head. Okay, so I think it was maybe that I thought it was kind of cooler back in the day. But, when I saw the Used, like 2 years ago, whatever it was, Burt McCracken still looked dirty. And he just always has looked greasy and just dirty. Like he hasn't bathed in a little while. And now something I thought that was entertaining was that when I saw them the last time, he was definitely wearing dad shoes. And I thought it was funny because he was dressed the same except for the dad shoe, but he still just looked dirty. And so I had a thing about when I was listening to this that it felt dirtier because of that. Does that make sense at all?
Well, like I said before, I think the first time, like I kind of remember like, yeah, okay. So I just looked it up. The Used played Ozfest in 2001. And so before the album came out, I used to go to our little record store and get those like little freebie CDs that would have like little samplers and like advanced singles and stuff like that. Yeah. And so I remember seeing 2001 on Ozfest, I heard A Box Full of Sharp Objects and was like, okay, these guys are pretty heavy. And then I bought the CD when it came out and was like, oh, this is screamo emo stuff. It's not really what I thought it was going to be. But to your point, I do remember seeing that video back in the day, and they were super, super energetic.
Yes.
Like to the point of not like jumping up and down, synchronized, not like feeling the music, like over the top energetic, like Birch climbing on things and climbing into the crowd and like going completely apeshit.
Like backflips and high kicks to the extreme. Yeah.
Let me tell you, I never went that hard. I was very energetic on stage. I still am as much as I can be. But the shoes get more comfortable as you get older. Yes. That is, it has to happen.
It does. I remember watching this happen live, and it's actually in, I think, the Taste of Ink video. I'm not sure which one, but it's where Bert screams so hard he throws up on stage. Now,
right.
That is something that when I was in high school, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Now, at almost 40, I'm like, cool. Do you have to?
No, it wasn't cool then. It's not cool now. No, I never thought that was cool.
well, I mean, at the time, in 2002, 2003, 4, whatever, I was like, man, he is really putting it in. And it was an extra part of the show. And, I thought it was neat. I thought it was a fun gimmick to have on stage. But now at this age, it's like, I don't need that. I think about the guy that has to clean that up on the stage, on the crew. I think about the guy that has to that his job is to pick up the cables with vomit on them, and I'm like, that's no good. So, some of that stuff has definitely died, and I think that he still has a part of that. I do know that the guitar player that was on this album, I cannot remember his name now, Quinn Allman, which I was curious if he was related to any of the Allman brothers, and he is not. Yeah, so Quinn is, I think, a very competent guitar player. I don't think he's the best of best, but he was kind of the pretty boy of the group. I remember when I went and saw them back in 2002, some of the ladies were like, oh, Quinn. I'm like, and I was sitting there going, which one's Quinn? And, because I barely knew who they were. So, all that being said, you ready to jump into it?
Yeah, I guess so. I can go on and on about what I like and don't like about mall emo, but we'll just get into this.
Okay, so I do one more thing on mall emo. I do want to say that the mall emo always seemed to kind of follow the biggest, and I feel like the used became mall emo because Hot Topic wanted to put their shirts in their store.
So I use the term mall emo. Mall emo. Yeah. Mall Temu is where you buy the t-shirts of the bands for like $1.50.
Yeah. Yeah.
I use that term kind of silly, but like, honestly, there was a certain demographic of kids that I know for a fact did not know who these bands were until they went to the mall and they saw at the Hot Topic, at the Spencer's, at Gadzooks, the My Chemical Romance t-shirt, the Fall Out Boy t-shirt, the Used t-shirt. And they were like, who's that? And then they would go and talk to their friends and listen to the stuff. And hey, that's great. Good for them. I use that term as a little bit of a slight, but also because you could also call it MySpace emo, if that makes you want to date it even harder.
No, I mean, I definitely think there's a difference between MySpace emo and mall emo, but I think that, stores like Hot Topic were really just a marketing gimmick for a lot of these bands, because that kind of stuff would happen, because this was before we had access to all of the music in the world, via streaming platforms and whatnot. So it was easier to find what bands you should be listening to if the store that you like to go to that carried shirts of bands that you liked already carried other shirts.
So real quick sidebar, before we had a Hot Topic at the mall in my hometown, Greensboro, you had to go to the mall in, I believe it was Winston-Salem, Haynes Mall, I think, had a Hot Topic. Yeah. I went there, had my parents take me there, and they had shirts. They were like buy one, get one half off or something. So I got two band shirts. One was a 311 shirt, because of course it was.
Right.
Second one was a Lost Prophets shirt.
That didn't age well. Track 1, Maybe Memories.
Damn, now I think I can. I'm not stronger now. Sliding sound. Now me, I'm not looking back. Don't deny it to anyone. 'Cause I'm alive.
If anybody wants to know what I was referring to when it didn't age well, just Google Lost Prophets and look at their Wikipedia and just,
You know what?
go down that rabbit hole. All right.
Maybe we'll do a side stories episode or something, and I can give the true crime story of that. I don't think I can.
Yeah,
I don't think I can.
All right. So
Okay.
let's talk about
Yeah,
maybe memories.
memories.
All right. So, okay. The intro on this album lets you know kind of what is in store to an extent. Because the intro on this album is just kind of, it's chaos. It's a very faint siren that gets increasingly louder. It's out of tune guitars being tuned. It's just background noise. It was almost like I put on the album for the first time and I was like, I remember this, but I never enjoyed the intro to it. But it felt very much like an intro, like they're tuning guitars and stuff, getting ready to get started. And then it starts that little drum fill, drum roll thing.
Yeah, I like, the doom, doo, doo, doom, 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 doo, doo, doom. Like those two notes back and forth has kind of a groove to it. I like this one okay. It doesn't wow me. I feel like his voice, okay, so one of the things that he does a lot is he will scream, but then at the end of the line, it sort of like falls apart. The verses of the song are a good example where he's just like, rah, 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 rah. And then the last line will be like, ugh. And it's sort of like, okay, he's so overcome with emotion, he can't control it. No, it's just, he went flat and pitchy and I don't like it.
Oh, see, I like it, especially in this one. I mean, I think he does a great job of going from clean to scream and back to clean. And I think that where he goes back to clean, it's because he can't scream anymore. And we do get that crack, but I think it worked on this one. But I also feel like it was like you could have cleaned it up a little bit more. Now that amount of cracking, I think is something better left to live, but I don't think that it necessarily hurt this one. But, where I talked about the emotion, I feel like comes from the lyrics. Like this one says, as we trudge along through the mud and try to call it home, but we aren't all right, not at all, not for 1 second. And like he just kind of like goes from that scream into that clean on it, and I like it.
We tried to last the mud. We tried to call it home. We won alright, not at all, not for one second.
I like the way it all falls apart and falls together almost at the same time.
Like I said, I like this one a little bit better because the music's a little bit heavier, so the screaming makes a little more sense. In addition to what I was saying about how he'll scream and then kind of fall apart at the end, he'll also do the opposite where he sings a line clean. At the end of the clean line, I'm like, I don't like that either. Like, pick a lane. Either you're screaming this part or you're singing this part. Because here's the thing. I get why that's cool and I get why people like it. But my musician brain is thinking, okay, that means when you are doing this live raw right now in the studio, which means when you do this live raw, live is going to be different because there is no structure to this verse and to this chorus. You're coming in and out of the screaming and the singing like whenever your throat feels like it, which, okay, cool. You're just, again, using that emotional philosophy. You're just so wrapped up in what's happening that you just can't control it. You're going to just go all over the place. But as a musician, it's like, well, where do you go from there? If you just are going to do that every song, then it starts to lose its impact very quickly.
No, I get that, but I can tell you that he sings it almost just like this live. And
when did you say you saw them?
I saw them back in 2002, and then I think not this September, but the one before it. Not this past September.
Well, he's been singing it for 20 years. I hope he's got it down by now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. This first track, I feel like it almost demands to be played loud, though. It's no, like, I listened to this in the car multiple times. I listened to it on the way to my camping trip I went on, 2-hour drive. Listened to it probably twice on the way to there, twice on the way back. And it feels like you just kind of have to bump up that volume a little bit when that guitar tuning comes on in the beginning.
I will say, we talk about headphone albums or speaker albums or whatever. This album seemed to sound better in my car than anywhere else.
Yeah, I don't understand that one on this one. But
I don't either, because even in headphones, there's not a ton of low end. The only time I felt the low end was in the car, and not a knock on any of the musicians in this band. The bass never does anything that, stands out. But it feels good to have that low end in the mix more than not.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I wanted to point out. The bass isn't something that really jumps out here, but it's like I've heard you say in the past about if it's not there, you notice. And it's almost like I noticed that it wasn't doing anything extra. Like I noticed the guitar, I noticed the drums. The bass was never something that really jumped out, but the bass was always there. It just kind of like hung out and just kind of did what was necessary. And that was it.
To our point here, the first note I wrote, because I've don't know if I've said this out loud on the show. I know I've told you, but when I do these listens, I try to take notes the very first time I listen to an album so I can immediately write down my immediate first reaction. As I go through and listen multiple times, I'll tweak that and see if I still feel the same. The first thing I wrote was, I remember this being a little heavier. And then when I listened to it in the car, I was like, okay, that feels more like what I remember, because I don't know. Like when it first kicked in, I was like, guitar sounds thin. You got the groove and you got the screaming, but it doesn't sound very heavy. And then when I had the extra low underneath it, I was like, that feels more like what I remember.
Yeah. There's nothing that headphones added to this album.
No.
Yeah. So,
and there are some parts with some strings and some little twinkly stuff, but it's nothing. I don't know. Even like like you said, the intro where there's like some kind of quiet noises in the background. So what? Like, I mean, I don't need it,
Right. All right. Let's talk about track 2, The Taste of Ink. This one is, I feel like, the most accessible single on this album. And by accessible single, I mean, you've got the couple others that were standouts on this album, and I feel like they were all standouts for a reason. But I feel like this is the one that people could really listen to and go, okay, that's who they are, and make you buy the CD, make you buy the ticket, make you buy whatever.
Yeah, I get why this was a single. I get why this was popular. I like the way that it just starts. I think it's cool when bands just say, to hell with an intro and just start with a verse. If you listen, they sort of do this thing where like each time the verse comes in, they add like a little something else by the last verse before the last chorus, it sounds a lot bigger than like the first verse of the, at the very beginning of the song.
Right. Now I can tell you that live, and it's almost like I did it instinctually and I didn't know that everybody else was going to do it, but it was like he kind of like stopped at a certain point and everybody screamed 4:00 in the effing morning and threw up a middle finger. And it was just kind of a cool, like, a cool moment of everybody working together. I don't know. It was fun. So this is one where I really started to feel like the whole pop elements were coming in, because this one just feels like a heavy pop song to me. And I'm okay with it because I like this song.
Yeah, and I think, and I kind of go into this in my closing statements, that the songs on here that I think are better than the other ones are the ones that are a little bit more poppy and have stood the test of time a little bit better because they're a little bit hookier. They're not as out of control. He's still doing some of that wacky shit with his voice that's like, it feels forced almost, because this is a little bit more of a chill song, that I think that like he's throwing in the extra like cracks and stuff. I don't think it's necessary. Maybe it's charming for people, but like you said, it's a slightly heavier pop song.
And so you want to talk about his screams, but I feel like, this is one where we first heard, and now this kind of goes with the whole, like, there wasn't a whole lot of screaming in nu metal. It was, there was some, but it wasn't a whole lot. And so now we get this like wave of music coming in that has screaming as almost like accent marks for everything. And I felt like this was where he proved that you could scream in a certain key, and really wasn't done before. And it was kind of, it was one of those sounds that kind of set what the future was going to be and what was coming.
Yeah, I'm kind of Googling here to see when some of these other albums I was listening to. See, like Full Collapse by Thursday came out in 2001. Yeah. Identity Crisis by Thrice came out in 2001. Not like a huge gap, but it was like I already heard bands that were starting to do that kind of vocal thing, and I liked those better, partially because I heard them first, but then especially Thrice, man, because those first like 2-3 Thrice albums had so much cool guitar noodling that like it helped them stand out from the pack, Yeah,
no, I get it. And I saw Thrice, I've seen Thrice a few times, but I saw Thrice while I was standing in the rain at dusk. It was just a cool moment altogether, cool thing altogether. I recommend it. But I don't know, the Taste of Ink, I still think holds up just as good as it used to in the car. I don't think it holds up as well, like through, headphones or speakers. I feel like this is a definite car album for sure.
Can I tell you my favorite part of the song? Can you guess what my favorite part of the song is?
When it ends?
Well, the outro, when it all starts to go out of tune and they all start playing the wrong notes.
Yeah.
That's fun. I like that. Like we've talked about that, like on the Beartooth album, like the personality moments. Yeah. See, that to me is a personality moment. The way Bert does his vocals, I don't think that's like a personality thing. Like that feels like, I don't know, like it's not the same thing for me. But when they go out of tune like that, the little stuff at the end of the record, even the way the album starts, like all that I like, because that feels very The Used.
And see, I feel like this album actually has several of those moments on the tail end of songs and, the beginning of songs, things like that. I feel like there's enough personality in this album to make it feel fun and greasy, because I get Burt McCracken all over it.
Yeah, yeah.
So speaking of personality, let's talk about track 3, Bulimic.
I'm holding your left mind. It's time I let just one slip by. I'm wasting what is right.
Now I say speaking of personality because I feel like we get more of a feeling of McCracken's personality on this track. And I feel like we get kind of a feeling of his ability to kind of control what's going on, control the listener.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't. I thought the first song was pretty strong because it was kind of heavy. I thought the second song was kind of strong because it was very catchy. This one's not heavy and it's not catchy. So I feel like on track 3, I'm already entering kind of filler territory. Like it's fine, but I don't know. I like the bridge. There's a vocal where he says, he's about to see and do a million things he never thought he'd get to do. And so to me, and you probably have a better idea of the lyrics than I do, but I got the impression that he was using like the term bulimic as almost like a term towards a person. And basically this is him telling that person, as if it was an illness, I'm leaving you behind because I'm going to go and do this thing that I have been gifted to do. And I thought all that was great. I really liked what I was getting out of the lyrics on this one.
Yeah, no, I kind of felt like this one was him realizing that this album was probably going to be something that broke them. And it did. Yeah. You know. And,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and he was literally going to go and see and do everything. Okay, so this is one of the places, actually one of the songs. I don't think this is one of the best songs on the album, but I do like this one. So Quinn Allman, the guitar player, I think he's got some fun, really cool riffs on this track. I like his guitar work here.
It's serviceable. Like, it doesn't do anything that like really like impresses me. Not on this song. It's fine. Like, I really like, this is one that really, and then as I'm like going along and I'm like, okay, this is fine. I like some of the lyrics. Then he does that thing at the end where it's like the music's really thin and it's kind of quieting out and Bert is just screaming his ass off. And like, that will never be like a thing for me where I'm like, oh wow, that's cool, let's keep doing that. Like, it just doesn't. That combination of things never works for me.
I will say that this album does seem to have a little trouble closing songs, and sometimes it works to their advantage, like you were just talking about, where everybody starts kind of playing out of sync with each other. Some places it doesn't. It's like they went with something to close a track instead of the best option for closing the track, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about track 4, Say Days Ago.
Think of what it looks like. I think of what it takes. Flame, strange, 'cause I feel the same.
So tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this one kind of goes with track 3 with Bulimic. Like, I kind of feel like they work together. I feel like this is the lesser of the two, but I kind of feel like they work together.
Yeah, see, I'm kind of the other way around. I think this one, I like this one a little bit better. It feels almost just a pinch of that Finch Say Hello to Sunshine thing, especially in that opening riff, that kind of like cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Like, I like that heavier sound that they're going for. And then when it goes into a little bit more of like a pop punk kind of verse, like, all that's kind of working for me. I like the bass line in the verses. I will say I did notice the bass guitar there a little bit. Question for you.
Answer for you, maybe. Let's find out if we have an answer.
What do you think he's talking about looking at and tasting? Because I think I know what he's talking about, but I'm not going to say it.
Go on, say it.
Well, I know what 2002 me would be thinking, and he's talking about.
I feel like he is also talking about the same sort of things.
Yeah. Okay.
Now,
all right.
I know that they went on Ozfest after this, and so I think it eventually turned into tasting something to do with one of the Osbournes.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah. Which a lot of people don't know that he actually, I think he got onto Ozfest, or because he was on Ozfest, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the chicken. You know, I know he was dating Kelly Osbourne for a little bit. I don't think that lasted very long, but I think he was on an episode or two of the Osbournes.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
So, all right. I think this one did a good job. Say Days Ago, I think it did a good job for kind of pushing the boundaries of the rock, emo, screamo, punk sound, you know, and there's another one where I feel like it's an important one to it. I don't feel like it's as good as Bulimic, but I do feel like this was kind of an important one for kind of stretching those boundaries a little bit. So, all right, let's jump into the first ballad, number 5, Poetic Tragedy.
Okay, so we've talked about the Mount Rushmore of emo lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just say, the cup is not half empty, as pessimists say. As far as it seems, nothing's left in the cup.
The cup is not half empty.
That's terrible. I hate that.
Yeah. So not the best. I don't feel like this is a great ballad. I feel like this is like an emo ballad to the extreme. I don't hate this song, but I don't feel like we needed a ballad at track 5 by any means. But I feel like it's a well-crafted song, but I don't think that it's a ballad that we needed at this point.
So the music I actually kind of like. It has a slight twinge of like 90s alternative to it that I'm cool with, but his vocals, okay, first of all, the lyrics are kind of cringy, but then also there's that screaming stuff again, man. Like the music is like soft and he's screaming on top of it. And I don't know, man. Like, I feel like you said, this is a ballad. We're not even halfway through the album and we're throwing out a really soft ballady song, which is fine, but I don't know. Then he screams so much over top of it that I don't know. I don't know. It's weird.
Okay. So I would actually say swap number 5, this track, and number 6, because number 6 is a song that more people know. And then number 7 is a song that more people know. And so I feel like, sticking, a ballad just a little bit later on your album might work better for you. Now, considering that we've got 2 ballads on this album, I don't know if it really would have, or if it would have just been better to leave this one off, because Poetic Tragedy is not one of my favorite songs. And I don't feel like, I think it might be the weakest point on this album. Now, I know that there are some, people that were big Used fans back in the day that will probably look at me and say that I'm crazy, or listen to this album and say that these people don't know what they're talking about, or listen to this episode and say they don't know what they're talking about. But fine, whatever.
And I feel like if this was your favorite album in 2002 at that age, and it's still your favorite album in 2024 at the age you are now, you might have some mental health issues you need to discuss with somebody. That's not to say you can't still like this, but if these lyrics and these emotions are still as prevalent to you 22 years later, that's on you. Like I listened to a different podcast where it was talking about Nirvana and the lyrics on Nevermind and some of the stuff Kurt Cobain was saying on those albums. If that's still your identity 20, 30 years later, that's not good. Like, it's okay if it's your identity when you're young and you're pissed off and depressed. Sure. But as you get older, right, hopefully you're working through those things. Right. So, like you said,
hopefully you have, found somebody that is kind of making things a little bit better for you, and you're not dealing with the poetic tragedy that is spoken of in this song.
Yeah. Like in 2002, you got your heart broken by your high school crush. She wouldn't go to the movies with you and watch Titanic or whatever. Like, I get it. Like, then it becomes like your banner anthem. But yeah, like at some point, and that's the thing for me, is like, not only do these kind of lyrics not age well, but this style of music that accompanies this style of lyrics, it just doesn't age well either for me.
I don't know. I'm going to disagree with your not aging well, because I feel like this album aged well, but I am going to agree with everything about if you're still identifying with things to the extent that you did in 2002 when this album came out, you got some problems. So, all right, let's talk about track 6, Buried Myself Alive.
And if you want me back, you're gonna have to ask. I think the chamber blew away, and I felt it the day that I had my own time and took advantage.
My personal favorite off of the album.
I was about to say, I won't call it my favorite, but I wrote my notes. I think if you had to make a playlist of the top 10 classic mall emo bands, you'd have to include The Used. And in my opinion, this might be the song that I would pick for them. Yeah. This, to me, has a lot of the same catchiness as like The Taste of Ink, but it's just a little bit heavier and just rocks a little bit more. And his vocals are a little bit more well-rounded to me. Now, the lyrics are still about depressing, violent shit that's unnecessary, but the actual delivery of those lyrics, I think, is much better.
Yeah, I mean, lyrically, it's something that a lot of people can relate to because it has to do with depression, and everybody went through teenage depression at some point. If you didn't, you might need to see a therapist. But instrumentally, it's great. It's clever. This is a heavy mid-tempo song. I think he has a great combination of screams and cleans here, and it sounds good. It sounds like this was probably one of the later tracks, like they took a break and then came back and recorded this one, and he was fresh. This was one place where I noticed the bass. The bass really stuck out to me on this one. I feel like that bass player, his name's Jeff Howard, Jeph, not Jeff.
Jeph.
Yes, yeah. I don't know if that was a choice or his name is Jeffus. I don't know.
I hope it's not a choice. I hope his parents are just cool.
So yeah, I feel like I noticed the bass a little bit better here. I feel like we got some great riffs on this one. I don't know. This is all around just a fun track to me.
To me, this is one that I feel like I keep using this terminology, but this one feels like it stood the test of time better. Like this one feels like you could play this song right now next to like Sugar We're Going Down by Fall Out Boy. And they both sound, they're just as cool now as they were 20 years ago.
Oh, I hate that you just said Sugar We're Going Down, and now I have to go and look up a clip of that song, and I have to, because I don't like Fall Out Boy.
You know, I sort of went back and forth on Fall Out Boy because, yeah, his voice can get a little annoying and talk about some cringy lyrics, but there's a certain point in time where those first couple Fall Out Boy albums, I was into them. I haven't really enjoyed anything since they started adding Munster sound bites and Uma Thurman references. But when they were like at their pop punkiness, like height of that sound they were going for, I kind of liked them. I'll admit it.
All right, that's fine. Track 7, a box full of sharp objects.
Sharp objects, what a beautiful.
Okay, so I feel like, Buried Myself Alive was a great track, and we've got another great track behind it. I love this one as well. This is a bouncy, just heavy song. It's fun.
Now, yeah, and so this was the first song I heard, and like I said, I got a little bit of a misconception of what to expect from the rest of the album, and that's cool. But this does something, and I want to clear it up before anybody calls me a hypocrite, because I really do like this song too. I think this is a really cool song. It's very simple lyrically. There's only like one, there's not a bunch of verses and choruses. It's pretty much just one repeating section sort of in different like volumes. There is a part where most of the music drops out and he's just screaming. But the difference is it's not pretty soft, happy music. It's like it's empty, but it's building and it feels aggressive even without the rest of the instruments. So before anybody comes at me for being like, you don't like it when he screams over pretty stuff, it's like, yeah, but this song is different because this whole song has this energy and angst about it that a lot of the record doesn't have.
Okay, so you're talking about where the music drops out and he's screaming. There is this really cool part where it's like the guitar and bass drop out, and it's like there's a scream drum solo.
So it's right at about the 45-second mark. Where it is exactly what you said. It's just kind of like real basic, like tom and kick and some bass. And to me, this section sounds more quote unquote metal than it does quote unquote emo. You know what I mean?
No, I understand you. Okay, so his scream in this one, there is a scream that he gives at 2:06 that in my opinion is perfect. I don't know. It's a great one. Then he also screams, "Is she normal?" And I love the way that he does that. I don't know. I love everything about this one.
Like I said, this is the one that made me go buy the album. This is the one I'm pretty sure this video was the one where he throws up, because if I'm not mistaken,
I think you're right.
Because if I'm not mistaken, this video is literally just footage of them from Ozfest. And again, 2001, 2002, I'm playing in bands. I'm trying to be the high energy guy on stage, jumping off amps and stuff. So when I saw them doing all that, knowing it was Ozfest, hearing the way he was screaming, the way the heavy music was, I was like, I'm in. I am in. And
right.
Obviously, after I heard the rest of these songs, I was a little less in. But yeah, just that brief shining moment, I was like, hey, The Used, I like that. So
yeah,
and I still like this song. Like, it still gets me pretty hype when that little, little staccato, little guitar lick. I like that. Yeah, fun song. I like it.
So I will say, the first time I saw them live, when they were headlining the show, I got a peek at their set list, and this has always stuck out to me. But, I was right at the stage, and so I could see the set list. And so when they play this song, their set list, for whatever reason, I still don't know, this song was listed as a box full of bloody tampons. I don't know. I don't know. There's always just been a feeling of dirty when it comes to these guys. So
yeah, and I was thinking about that. I said this song is fun. I have a feeling lyrically it's not. I found a box full of sharp objects, and with all the other self-harm, depressing lyrics on this album, I'm assuming it's not a fun song.
No, probably not. All right, track 8, Blue and Yellow. The second ballad. I feel like this is better than the other one, but also we have several moments of where it comes down and it's not as heavy. I don't know if ballads are necessary here. I will say this is an emo ballad with strings.
Okay, so if you thought getting that Fall Out Boy song sample was going to be a problem, I got one for you here. So, on the one hand, I appreciate the fact that Bert is trying to do something a little different with his vocals here. He's kind of doing this falsetto thing. The problem is he's not real good at it. And it sounds like at any moment his voice is just going to disappear. And so all I could think of the whole time, every time I heard this song, was, have you ever heard the Tenacious D song about inward singing?
No. I've listened to a lot of Tenacious D.
Okay.
I like Tenacious D, so I don't know that one. Maybe
so it's like a little, it's a little sketch where Jack Black is telling Kyle Gass about this new invention that he came up with called inward singing.
What'd you do?
I've done it. I fucking did it. The most powerful tool in singing technology since yodeling, dude. Oh my God, inward singing.
He said, rock singers are only rocking you half the time.
Think about it, man! Rock singers are only rocking you half the time. The other time they're breathing in.
Yeah.
So then he goes into this whole thing. He's like, so then I start some lyrics, and you can't believe I'm singing, and I'm never gonna stop because I'm all singing.
And then I start some lyrics, and you can't believe I'm singing, and I'm never fucking stopping, and I'm always fucking singing. And
that's all I could hear every single time was Bert doing inward singing. And no, I hate it. I hate this song.
So, okay. I didn't hear when you said this, and the reason why I said I never heard it before, was I heard inward singing, not inward, which both sound very similar.
Wow. No, that's a totally different. I don't think Tenacious D ever did a song with.
That's why I said no when he originally said it. So, okay. I do like the rhythm that he has in this song. Like when he says, should have done something, but I've done it enough. By the way your hands were shaking, rather waste some time with you. I do like the way that he lays it out. But I'm going to go back to what I was saying before, that we've got enough moments where it comes down. I can definitely say that we don't have a song of exhaustion within this. With the fatigue doesn't set in on this one for me. And I think it's because the songs have enough enough diversity within a single song, dynamics, as we have said, and they do that. I don't know if a second ballad here is what we needed. I think that we've got some other cringy emo lyrics within this one.
Yeah.
But I do like his rhythm about it. Now, there was a moment in this one that I have always had a problem with, where it's like he's doing he's trying to carry a note out, and it's almost like he was listening to it and it was like, no, I don't like this part, so we're gonna auto tune it and kind of sample it, make it right around, and I don't like that one.
Oh, I don't even know if I picked up on that.
Oh, I'm gonna put that. Yeah, listen.
After I listen to that Tenacious D album again, I'll have to look for that.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about track 9, Greener with the Scenery. I like this one because it feels fun, but for no other reason.
Yeah, so the clean guitar part at the beginning is a little different. There's this little hi-hat pattern, you kind of mixing it up a little bit. We talked about this before. You're getting into the back half, the wee hours of your record, and you're throwing a couple new things out there. That's cool. That's cool. The problem is that vocally he doesn't do anything interesting, and then the chorus sort of just feels derivative. Like it just feels like more of the same. Now, I could let all that go, but at about the 2:30 mark, when you get into this bridge, it's almost interesting because you've got some strings and you've got this almost like Beatles crescendo thing happening. But then there's like Bert running around the studio screaming his head off in the background of it all that just totally like, what are you doing? There's this actual like almost Pink Floyd classic rock orchestral swelling going on that is completely ruined by this nonsense screaming. Like I don't know. Like that part baffles me.
Okay, so this one feels fun. I don't think this is a standout track by any means. This one feels like emo in the background. I mean, because it all just feels like background noise.
Yeah.
The Greener with Scenery is not a standout track to me.
Yeah, and like I said, the one part that I thought really did stand out devolves into just more of the same because Bert's going to Bert, and he's cracking all over it, and that's fine. But for me, it's like you have this like almost like Day in the Life by the Beatles sort of like swell in the like string orchestral section that I can't fully appreciate because of the added unnecessary screaming stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Track 10, Noise and Kisses.
It's worth my time, whatever that means. So share with me, 'cause I need it right now. Let me see your insides. Right.
The thing that I will say about this one is that I feel like McCracken and Allman, Bert and Quinn, I feel like this is a them song. I feel like this is their song here. I do not hate this song, but I do not love this song, but I feel like they love this song, and that's why it's here.
Actually like this one, possibly my favorite song on the album.
Oh, I don't hate this one by any means. I think this is a good song. I don't love this one. I don't hate this one, but I liked it because I feel like you could feel the chemistry between those two on this one.
I like the driving guitar lick. It's not super complex, but there's a little bit of walking on the notes that I like. I actually think Bert's voice is really good on this one. I love the way he does that. Jaded now.
Jaded now.
like that little walk down.
Yeah.
Because that would have been real easy for him to do one of his, I'm jaded now, like some kind of weird flat shit. But no, he does this real pretty walk down. It's simple and it's catchy. I think my one complaint is that chorus, especially the first chorus, is just kind of like, it almost takes a dip. Right. And then the second chorus is big. I wish it would have just been big from the get-go. And the other thing is it's short. So before
2
I'm
minutes,
like
29 seconds.
Yeah. So for me, like, I like the riffs. I like the way Bert's singing, and it's over before I'm bored with it. There's not some weird empty screaming section in the middle. Like, no, this is cool. Like I said, this might be my favorite on the album.
So I feel like that thing you were talking about where the first chorus goes down, the second chorus goes up, I feel like that was a choice to kind of, I feel like it's kind of what drives the song through, where it's like, where you feel like that second chorus is going to do the same thing. It's like, nope, we're going to go up. We're going to get big.
Yeah.
And I feel like that worked for this one. You know,
yeah, a little extra dynamics, for sure.
Like
It's
I
not
said,
bad.
Like I said, didn't love it, didn't hate it. I just thought this was a fun one. And I liked it because you could feel the chemistry between them, but I feel like they love this song more. So,
yeah.
All right, track 11, On My Own.
Dreams that I have found nothing at all. Wanna hear your voice out loud. Slow it down, slow it down.
I feel like this is not labeled as, but is a third ballad on this album. You know, but I feel like this one is well placed because I feel like this allows the audience and Bert to kind of take a break with all the screaming before the next track, which has more, you know.
Right.
And I feel like this was probably one of the most well-placed tracks on this album because it kind of brings it down before it comes back up again. And I like it there. Now, go on. I see that you're just waiting to dive in on this one.
Well, yeah, I'm like reading through my notes and kind of thinking to myself how the song goes and chuckling to myself because of what I wrote down. But when the song started, I liked the tone of the acoustic guitar. I liked that Bert's voice was reserved.
See all those people on the ground.
And it felt like he was in control of it. Mm-hmm. And then the bridge starts around 1:45, and I really like the music. It's basically that acoustic guitar with some strings, and it's real nice. So I'll read what I wrote. So why in the name of all that's holy does Bert have to scream his damn head off the whole time in the background? Like, why can we not have this pretty moment? This song is beautiful. Let it be pretty. Dashboard Confessional Chris Caraba's not screaming in the background of every acoustic track. Like, why does Bert have to do this?
I don't think Chris Caraba's a screamer, but no. I like this one. I do wish that he wasn't screaming as much because, like I said at the beginning, this gives the audience and them a bit of a break, and it does kind of bring things down. I feel like this one is simple, but it's effective as could be. It's, like you said, guitar, strings. It's simple. I don't think the screaming was necessary, but I don't feel like it hurts this one.
So that bridge, and then coming out of the bridge, there's this one note that he does around like 2:14 or so, where his voice like cracks at the end. And again, I guess for all the 16-year-olds in the audience that are just like hanging on every word, are just like tears dripping down their face. But as damn near 40 and not a fan of emo, stop it. You're a grown man. Stop it.
All right, track 12, Pieces Mended. That opening guitar lets you know that it's not the same.
Nope.
Yeah.
I like that.
Bert's voice sounds more out of control here than it does anywhere else.
Been faced with what I'm faced with, I feel like I can.
Yes, but it almost makes sense with the way the music is.
Oh, 100% agree with you. Like, I feel like his loss of control fits more here than anywhere else. Now, I do think this is a great example of evolution, or not evolution. I don't know, call it what you will, but it's like this track does such a great job of starting so big, and then it ends great. I mean, the song closes like this one feels like a closer because it's like with 309, with 3 minutes, we get one of the biggest sounds that we have. I mean, we get a great thing here. At 55 seconds, the music drops and we get this like muted cymbal.
I've got a feeling in my gut that feels me.
And it still feels heavy, but it's not heavy, but it still feels that way. I just think this was a great track overall. I feel like this was a great way to end the album.
Yeah, I like it. I like there's one thing that Bert does around like 112 where he does this thing with his voice that remind me a little bit of like Chino Marino around the Fur era Deftones, where he's kind of like whisper rapping sort of with like this filter on his voice. I liked all of that.
You're talking about the breathing, the
yeah.
So I can tell you that live, he just gets hunched over and like holds the microphone like up to his mouth and just breathes in it. And so like that's what I have in my head whenever I've heard this. And it's like, you know, there is this like the song gives a break at 2 minutes, and it's almost like at 2 minutes, it's where everything really starts to change. And so we get a whole minute of just the building into the fading into the piano, and we get that breathing. I feel like the breathing is a weird, strange choice, but it works, you know, whereas Chino was like almost using that as his vocal styling. They were just using it as like a special thing here.
Now, you say great closer, but that's not the end of our album.
Yes, this is actually the first album that we have had that actually has a hidden track. And I'll tell you what happens with this hidden track. In the car, I know it's coming, and so I'm trying to drive along, grab my phone, and like, you know, forward ahead a little bit because I know it's there. When I'm listening to it, sitting here in my basement, where my computer is, when his laugh comes on, it scares the shit out of me every time. It's like I completely forget. I'll remember this hidden track called okay, so I couldn't find definite like, you know, things. Okay. Polly and Choke Me start at 8:01. So I feel like Polly is the beginning thing where it's just kind of the silly start where he's laughing and there's a British stripper.
Hey, you're fun. I'm sorry, darling. There's nowhere for you to run. Your friends here tell me you like big tits. And they're not on about little ones. So try these ones aside, know what they do. Now, are these...
And I say that because I know they're not a British band.
So the story, as far as I know, is the story was they hired a stripper named Polly for Bert's birthday. And
that's why she sings Happy Birthday, I guess.
Happy birthday to you.
Yes, and from what I understand, she was either a bit heavy or a bit past her prime. I can't remember, or maybe both. I don't remember exactly, but she was not like a typical stripper, I guess. Yeah. And so they're dying laughing, and he's really uncomfortable because I think she's doing like a strip tease while she's singing to him and stuff. And then, after all of that, they go into, I think it's Choke is what it's called.
Choke Me is what I have.
Choke Me.
So, okay, before we go into Choke Me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I find his laugh terrible and annoying, but I feel like it fits him. But
it also adds to that whole personality of the album thing we were talking about.
Exactly. And I have never been comfortable with boobly woobly macaroonies.
Now, are these boobly woobly macaroon is big enough for you.
That's the descriptor. But I understand it just kind of goes into her little rhyme, thing that she has. So, all right.
So, well, before we get into the last song, too, let me just say, again, talking about this era, late 90s, early 2000s, you have your hidden tracks and stuff. We just talked about how, like, this album deals with self-harm. There's a song called Bulimic. There's songs about depression. And then you have this at the end of your album to kind of give a little bit of levity. Right. And I appreciate that. Yeah. I think back to the end of some of Korn's first couple albums, like songs like Daddy and Kill You, where the last song is just a slog of just depression. Oh. And it's tough, so I commend them for at least throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with the Polly part of this at all. Yeah. I just wish it didn't start with his super high pitched laugh that scares the shit out of me. So
that's true.
I will say the first time I listened to this album, it scared me just the same because I wasn't expecting it. Although I did look at it and go, an 11-minute track, something's up there, like we've talked about.
Something's coming.
Yeah. So I knew something was there. But all right. So Polly comes to a close, and very abruptly behind Polly starts Choke Me. Which I think is probably the heaviest damn thing on this entire album.
I got a little bit of that dark Finch again, that Say Hello to Sunshine era Finch, at least at first, because it has that really heavy, you're right, it's super, super heavy, but then it goes into this like kind of poppy electric piano thing.
Yeah.
Fucking drunk deal. I'm sitting there waiting.
It's like, it's still kind of heavy. It's real fast. Like the whole song, without being able to look at it, I don't know, but I can't imagine it's much longer than about 2 minutes.
So I don't have how long that one is, but it starts at 8:01 and the track is 11 minutes long. So
okay, so close to 3, but right,
okay. But see, I don't know how long Polly was. Like I don't have the time on each of those individual things.
Okay. Yeah, so it's pretty short. It's just real fast, aggressive, bunch of screaming. Like, it's cool. It's fun.
Yeah, I have absolutely no problem with it. I actually think it's probably one of the best spots on the whole album. But I appreciate that it comes after this thing where after we have all these dark topics. I do appreciate that track 12 is called Pieces Mended because it felt a little more hopeful, whatever. But I really loved Choke Me. It's actually one of my favorite parts of the album.
Yeah, I'm cool with that one too.
Monster, what's new with you?
Hey, good looking. What you got?
Cooking. Before we started recording, I would have said Box Full of Sharp Objects because that was the one I heard. They were on Ozfest. That's what I was thinking. But honestly, going back through it, I think probably maybe Memories. I feel like that has a little more groove to it than Sharp Objects. And also the way it goes out, like the last 15-20 seconds of the song where it really locks into that doom doo doom 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 doo doo doom. Like you could see that being in the middle of a new metal record, I think.
Yeah, okay.
So Danger, what's cooking?
Box Full of Sharp Objects.
It cooks all right.
Yeah, it definitely does. So, all right, you want to give me your closing statement?
Yeah, strap in, folks, because Daddy's going to ramble.
All right. Don't ever call yourself Daddy again.
Oh, well, no one else is going to call me Daddy. I got to do it myself. That's not true. I have 2 kids. They call me Daddy.
Yeah,
okay.
All right. If they don't, something's wrong. Go on.
Well, my 5-year-old's gotten into the habit of calling me bruh. I'm not real into that.
Yeah, the girls call me bruh. Yeah. Okay. So please have your children start calling you Papa.
No, that's what they call my dad. They call him Paw Paw.
All right. Go on. Just give me your closing statement.
Certain styles of music that were super popular come back around, either due to nostalgia or just the fact that it was really good, got oversaturated, got burned out, needed a cool-off period. I also think a lot of genres stand the test of time and sound just as fresh now as they did when they were recorded. To me, this flavor of emo doesn't really fall into any of these categories. I think people our age hold a lot of these bands in high esteem because we were going through some growing pains and heard these songs during our formative years. But if we look at the music objectively now, I just don't think it holds up. Most of the chord progressions are derivative, the vocals are out of control and unstructured, and the lyrics are cliched as all hell. That's not to say every band from this genre is bad or every song is terrible or anything like that. Just as a whole, I think mall emo is kind of weak. With all that being said, there is a reason The Used has stood the test of time better than a lot of their contemporaries. While I don't particularly love it, you can't deny some of these songs have some lasting power. The Used never get too heavy to scare off shyer emo kids, but they never get so saccharine to scare off metalheads either. The Used managed to slot in perfectly alongside MCR, Census Fail, and Taking Back Sunday without ever sounding exactly like any of them. In large part due to Burt McCracken's vocal style. Love it or hate it, it's distinct. However, for me, it's just not my thing. It's the kind of music that I don't hate while it's on, but don't go out of my way to put on very often. 1 to 10, 5.57.
All right, 5.57 from Monster. All right.
Now save us with your well-written, concise closing statements.
It's more concise than yours. All right. So the used, I don't know. That feels weird to say. Anyway, all right. The used debut self-titled album has provided many songs and sounds almost essential to the scene's stability. The nearly 22-year-old album feels timeless in a way. This album is undoubtedly a classic and has held a way of living rent-free in my head for 22 years. This album has bite even when it shows pop elements. It does feel a bit juvenile at times in style. It also helped similar projects in defining a new era of sound and vulnerability, detailing struggles, conflicts in a way that only this album could, screaming out and puke on stage in the most emo of ways. It isn't without its faults, but we're all growing, and we have been since 2002. I gave this album a 7.953.
Okay, you can't have 3 decimal points.
Who said I can't? Math is math is for all of us. All right, so that puts The Used into the 16th position, right below Drugs and right above Ongoing Concept, and that puts it at a 6.7615.
Oh my God.
Oh, yes, we have 4 decimal points. All right.
We spent so much time wondering if we could, we didn't stop to think if we should.
Oh, but we have. All right, so if you disagree with the score that we gave this album, then please come on over to the Breakdowns for Breakfast Facebook page. Shoot us a message there. Let us know what you think about that. Let us know if there's an album that you'd like for us to break down in the future. Monster, what album are we talking about next week?
Speaking of which, we have another listener request. A good friend of mine. It's his birthday. Might as well give him let him get a request in. We're going to do, and it's a weird one, no pun intended, Weird Al's album from 1999, Running with Scissors. Danger, I accidentally ate a clock for breakfast this morning. It was very time consuming.